One statement from Fox Sports seems to confirm that.
Another German homeschooling family was ripped apart when an army of German police officers and social workers surrounded the home of the Wunderlichs near Frankfurt a few weeks ago and took away their children. Their only crime was homeschooling. After an international outcry and a court hearing, the Wunderlich children were returned. But this was not a victory for homeschooling or parents' rights in Germany, because the Wunderlichs have been forced to send their children to school.
You want some more evidence of wonkiness that is going on in the world? All right, let me take you to Colorado. Let me introduce you to a congressman who is trying to introduce a civil union bill. Listen very, very carefully to his attitude about you, Christian.
And we've written Senate Bill 11 to make sure that this separation between religious belief and what's happening here in our state code, in our statutes, our civil laws, are kept separate. For Senate Bill 11 respects religious freedom. This bill does not reach into anyone's church or mosque or synagogue. You can have all the free exercise there that you want. Exercise it as you see fit. But don't let your free exercise run my life. Don't claim religion as a reason the law should discriminate. We have laws against discrimination. Discrimination is banned in employment and housing and public accommodations. And so bakeries that serve the public aren't supposed to look down their noses at one particular class of persons and say, we don't sell cakes to you. It's troubling, this discrimination, and it's already illegal. So, what to say to those who claim that religion requires them to discriminate? I'll tell you what I'd say. Get thee to a nunnery and live there then. Go live a monastic life away from modern society, away from the people you can't see as equals to yourself, away from the stream of commerce where you may have to serve them or employ them or rent banquet halls to them. Go someplace and be as judgmental as you like. Go inside your church, establish separate water fountains in there if you want, but don't claim that free exercise of religion requires the state of Colorado to establish separate water fountains for her citizens. That's not what we're doing here.
Wonky. The world is going wonky.
Also, Homeland Security says people who oppose abortion or worry about the threat of illegal aliens could pose a radical threat to America. They're the ones we need to be watching at Homeland Security. Why are conservative values suddenly being singled out as a terror threat?
You got a bloody right to say, right, you're bloody well right. You know you got a right to say.
From the Department of Homeland Security sent to law enforcement agencies across the country warning about the potential for an increase in right-wing extremist activity. It warns about groups and individuals dedicated to single issues like abortion, immigration, and gun rights, and even raises a red flag about veterans returning home from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Some people, understandably, when they caught word of this yesterday, have issues today. J. Alan Sekulow, Chief Counsel of the American Center for Law and Justice. How you doing, sir? Good morning to you. What do you make of this?
Good to see you again. Well, listen, this is outrageous. I've got the report in my hand. I've read it. I couldn't believe it when it came out. Bill, I had our office verify that it was actually correct. When I read it, there's one thing that's glaringly missing here. No discussion about the real terrorists, the Al-Qaeda cell groups and others that are located inside the United States.
It's all about domestic.
The most dangerous.
It literally changes the entire focus for the Department of Homeland Security has been doing.
correct. And it says domestic terrorists, the most dangerous, are single-issue domestic terrorists. And as you said, that includes pro-lifers, that includes people concerned about the issue of immigration, and returning what they call radicalized veterans from the Iraq and Gulf War. Interestingly, the whole article, the whole assessment, as they called it, is entitled Right-Wing Extremism, Radicalization, and Recruitment. I want to tell the Department of Homeland Security, do us all a favor, catch the real terrorists. Don't worry about the grandmother on the street corner holding up a pro-life sign, or some guy that legally goes in and buys a gun for hunting. And returning veterans should be handled by Veterans Affairs and make sure they're incorporated back into the society. We owe that to our veterans. But to call them terrorists is just outrageous.
The U.S. Army is directing troops to remove scripture etched into their military scopes. The passages from John and 2 Corinthians were inscribed on them by the manufacturer Trigicon. Soldiers at Fort Wainwright in Alaska told Fox News they were ordered to submit their scopes so the Bible verses could be scraped off and painted over with black paint. Disturbing. An Army spokesman said Trigicon has agreed to remove scripture from future orders.
4 Christian missionaries were recently arrested for disorderly conduct. What was their behavior that got them arrested? These 4 Christians were peacefully handing out the Gospel of John outside an Arab cultural festival. Now, the festival was not a private or even a Muslim event. It was an Arab festival, free and open to the public. A video shows the Christian group that included a former Muslim outside about a block away from that event. They were standing quietly on the corner handing out Bibles when they were arrested by no less than 8 police officers. Now, under Sharia law, it is forbidden to preach Christianity to a Muslim. But, Madam Speaker, these discriminatory arrests against Christians did not occur in a Muslim country. They occurred in Dearborn, Michigan.
Today, we're going out and enforcing a new law that was passed by our local lawmakers. It was inspired by the recent Arizona immigration law. However, it's broadening the scope and targeting a different group of illegal aliens. We're going to go set up an immigration checkpoint at a spot where we have reports that they're known to congregate. We're going to go try and round up and deport as many of these folks as we can.
Come on through, sir. Keep walking through. You're good, sir. You can keep on coming through. You're good. Do you have your documentation showing that you can be here on Native American land?
2 Ithaca, New York residents have been released on bond after refusing to answer questions about their immigration status as they attempted to board a domestic flight in Texas. Omar Figueredo and Nancy Morales were stopped twice by Border Patrol agents before they could proceed to a security checkpoint at an airport in Brownsville, Texas. Both times they refused to disclose their citizenship status. The first time, they missed their flight. After returning a second time and refusing to answer again, they were arrested by police and held for roughly 7 hours.
If you live in San Diego County, you've probably driven through one of the county's 6 roadside checkpoints, and a Border Patrol agent has likely asked you if you are a U.S. citizen. But do you have to answer that question? One group is refusing to answer, and they're posting their checkpoint confrontations on YouTube.
U.S. citizen, sir? Respectfully, sir, I do not have to answer that question. Sir, are you a U.S. citizen?
I don't have to answer that question, sir.
What's that?
I don't have to answer that question. I'm sorry.
I'm a private citizen. I'd like to freely travel down this road without having to answer questions from federal agents. Unless we're living in a police state, unless this is Mexico or Nazi Germany, it's still America, and I can travel down this road without having to answer questions from federal agents.
And all you have to do is say I'm a U.S. citizen and you'll be on your way.
But this is a matter.
You're making a big deal about it.
This is a matter of principle to me, sir.
Here to talk about the principle and about what the Constitution says about your right to refuse answering those types of questions is David Loy, legal director of the ACLU in San Diego and Imperial counties. Welcome back, David.
Thank you.
The constitutional argument that this gentleman and many are saying, what does that involve as far as your right to refuse to answer?
I think they're absolutely correct. Whenever questioned by law enforcement, all persons have the right to refuse to answer questions.
As far as your right to privacy, your right to revoke, to remain silent.
It's a right to remain silent. It's a right to privacy. It's a right to simply refuse to cooperate and refuse to answer questions.
Another issue is the checkpoints themselves. If they are constitutional, where does that stand right now?
The Supreme Court held in a case called Martinez Fuerte that the government does have the right to set up interior immigration checkpoints near the border to assist in immigration enforcement. The ACLU strongly opposes those checkpoints. We think that checkpoints, suspicionless checkpoints, are the hallmark of a police state, not a free society. We think they're fundamentally un-American.
Those that didn't fit in Hitler's Germany had reason to fear. The Nazis allowed no opposition. Political parties that once had stood against them were banned. Their leaders left the country or stayed to face harassment or arrest. It was all legal, but only because Hitler now was the law.
We Nazis have conquered Germany, but to restore this country completely we need discipline and we need order. So I will deal ruthlessly with anyone who would stop me. I won't have ignorant, misled, insignificant people shot, but those really responsible will in all cases be crushed to earth.
In March 1933, the first concentration camps appeared. Brutal prisons run by Heinrich Himmler's black-shirted SS. Here, German citizens were sent for any act of political opposition. Maybe just writing an anti-Nazi slogan on a wall, or keeping a banned book, or telling a joke at the expense of some party official. The secret police, the notorious Gestapo, carried out the arrests. And working hand in hand with them, the tens of thousands of ordinary Germans committed, or just spiteful enough to tell on their neighbors.
You don't dare say anything out loud against the Nazis. Say in a streetcar, you don't give your opinion to anyone you don't know. You never do anything that's forbidden. If people say Heil Hitler, you say Heil Hitler.
I knew of people who turned in their neighbors. I knew of people who turned in their neighbors convinced they were doing the right thing. It's a system. Everyone's stuck in the Nazi web. It's quite devilish because no one trusts one another.
How German Jews were being victimized. How trade unions had been banned. How, despite the boom in the economy, with no one to argue their case, workers' take-home pay had fallen. How the professions were being stripped of non-Nazis, civil servants, doctors, teachers, judges, losing their jobs unless they towed the Nazi line.
It isn't usual to question acts of government here. It's close to treason.
This was sent to me. I don't know who it's from. There was a name on it. But I think it's important that I read it to you, because remember I've told you that there's tunnels from the Straits up in Canada. It says Russian and Chinese forces are very active in Canada. They are rebuilding and straightening the railroad tracks for the anticipated heavy use of railway transportation for incoming military personnel from the West Coast, both Russian and Chinese forces, as well as transporting military vehicles and armaments of food supplies. New tracks are being laid between the border states and Canada. Those people who are arrested are resistors or non-conformants will also be transported in specially prepared boxcars to the death camps that are already reestablished near the border, such as the ones near Cut Bank, Montana. Look up a report named Death Camp of Cut Bank, Montana. The death camp inside Cut Bank has been conveniently located right off a major Amtrak express line with the hopes of transporting these resistors and nonconformants conveniently to death by rail. Reports have been received from sources nationwide, which is indicative that certain rail cars are quietly being revamped from the inside so that they can be used for personal transports to such death camps.
It looks like a normal post just sitting here on the ground, but within minutes, this piece of equipment expands to 12 feet in the air. It's been a challenge for the Fort Smith Police Department to patrol large gatherings, but they think this observation tower will solve the problem.
With it being that high in the air, like I said, it is very visible. It's extremely visible. And it also gives our officers a bird's eye view over the rest of the crowd.
In Canada, yet another video has surfaced and gone viral. Another video that is appearing to show blatant police brutality, this time in Ottawa.
He just hit him! He just hit him!
Those that didn't fit in Hitler's Germany had reason to fear. The Nazis allowed no opposition.
Darren Bryce, in a Liverpool park last August, sat on the floor surrounded by police officers. He is injured and being tended to. What happens next is now part of an internal police investigation. During the struggle, it appears one of the officers repeatedly punches the man to his upper body.
In July 1941, hundreds of Jewish men were marched to a secluded spot in the woods near Vilnius in Lithuania. Blindfolded, walking in single file, they reached a specially prepared pit where they were lined up and shot. This was just the beginning. Throughout the war, 100,000 people would be killed at Panari.
Dozens and dozens of people who tried to escape and were killed by dum-dum bullets. Who were hitting their heads. Mothers holding children and young couples embracing each other.
And the most shocking thing about it is that many of these Jews were shot not by Germans, but by their fellow Lithuanian countrymen.
I had planned another closing message, but I feel compelled to say what I'm about to say. Now, I risk sounding like a conspiracy theorist, but it's no longer a theory. What I'm about to say is fact. The secret organizations of the world power elite are no longer secret. They have planned and are now leading us into a one-world communist government.
Executive order signed by President Obama has sparked controversy on both sides of the political aisle. The National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order was signed quietly Friday night. It gives the president the power to control U.S. resources.
The Rules Committee is going to meet in the House. They are going to come up with a rule that makes it okay for them to do a same-day bill. So they'll pass this rule. It's, believe it or not, called martial law.
This would give the President of the United States the authority to declare basically martial law during times of peace.
There are new disturbing developments out of Washington tonight regarding the President's belief that he has the legal authority to assassinate U.S. citizens. Incredibly enough, it appears that our commander-in-chief actually believes that authority exists not only on foreign soil, but right here on American soil as well.
But Senators McCain and Levin have added this legislation which would authorize the president to declare the entire United States of America, all 50 states and all territories, to be a battlefield, even though there's no battle, thanks be to God, going on here.
War on terror is different.
And that would authorize him to use commander-in-chief authority in the United States, to use the military to arrest people in the United States who, in the president's opinion, are enemies of the country.
Particularly to hear President Obama claim the power to keep people in prison indefinitely with no charges against them, no conviction, no sentence, just imprisonment.
Joining us now is former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino. Dan, thanks a lot for joining us. What do you mean there's no such thing as gun control, only people control? Tell me what that means.
Tucker, this is larger ideological ploy by this administration. They're not being authentic with America, whether it's the sequester, healthcare, or the gun control issue. What they do is they manipulate an emotional crisis, a national emotional crisis, to further an ideological agenda which involves the evaporation, the slow disintegration of your civil rights, your liberties, your ability to live and let live. And it's a disturbing pattern that, frankly, is really starting to get under my skin.
The US is funneling money into tracking systems that are threatening to make the very concept of privacy a thing of the past. It could mean people's every move being used against them to keep them under surveillance.
The information age was an era nearly everybody embraced. But today's surveillance age, experts say, is a reality almost no one can escape.
David, why does the DHS need 450 million hollow point bullets?
That kind of ammo that they purchased from ATK, hollow point ammunition, as you had explained, it's designed to, tear through human flesh and then expand. It's designed to kill people. This is not the optimal kind of ammo you would buy for target practice. It's more expensive and it's more precise.
Do you think this is a sign that they're preparing for some sort of mass civil unrest?
So they have an open bid right now, DHS, for even more ammunition, for 175 million rounds of .223 caliber rifle ammo, almost identical to the ammunition used by NATO peacekeeping forces. So that's very interesting. Are they planning on some kind of widespread economic unrest in the U.S. that would require NATO forces to help us out?
$500 million in surplus military weaponry from the Pentagon, which is authorized through the Pentagon's 1033 program. During the late 70s, Congress passed legislation called Posse Comitatus, barring the military from operating on American soil. And in the early 80s, there was an effort to circumvent that in Congress by arming police with military-grade weaponry. And now we're seeing that play out in the streets. People in the inner city in the U.S. have been experiencing this. So civilians in the U.S. are now up against basically military-style policing.
The battle against terrorism involves all of us. Everybody in this country is a potential terrorist.
The Department of Homeland Security sent to law enforcement agencies across the country warning about the potential for an increase in right-wing extremist activity. It warns about groups and individuals dedicated to single issues like abortion, immigration, and gun rights.
Tonight, our focus is on every American's right to freedom of expression and freedom of religion. It's the Christians who are under siege by government officials and anti-religion groups who think Christmas and Christianity have no business in the public arena.
The Department of Defense has just issued a new list of extremists that should be watched. And on that, in fact, number one, past the Muslim Brotherhood and past Hamas, Hezbollah, number one, evangelical Christians.
We begin tonight with a newly leaked U.S. Army military police training manual for what they are calling civil disturbance operations. The Army manual outlines the plan to kill rioters and demonstrators in America. That's right, they have plans to confiscate our firearms and kill American citizens on U.S. soil. This during a mass civil unrest, I guess, shooting innocent civilians perhaps. And it goes on to describe how prisoners will be processed through internment camps. Wow. So there you have it. Our own military being trained for armed conflict with U.S. citizens. They're being trained to confiscate our guns in preparations to process us into camps during civil unrest.
A pretty scary scene along the Chicago River turns out to be a military training exercise.
There was nothing routine that folks reported about seeing the jarring, as they witnessed the jarring scene of at least 3 Black Hawk helicopters flying at times in close order formation.
Just in, a military drill in downtown Miami, complete with these Black Hawk helicopters, elite soldiers, and police officers swarming the street.
Take a look, swing back over here. This may be involved in this training or not. Again, let me tell you what all of this is that we know of. It's a joint military training exercise involving local police, also military.
Sight of Army helicopters and the sound of gunfire created a lot of concern this afternoon in one Houston neighborhood.
There were armed men in fatigues, plenty of weapons, and what many thought were real live rounds.
So here's the article by Steve Watson. Military helicopters conduct covert exercises over U.S. bank buildings. This is all part of other drills going on to acclimate the public to being attacked by our own military that are happening here in the United States. Here it is.
LAPD and elite military units conducted extraordinary counterterrorism training in the skies above downtown LA tonight.
At one point, they made what appeared to be a drop-off at a park. Within seconds of landing, the helicopter was back in the air.
It was a strange sight in the skies over Los Angeles. Military Special Forces flying a practice mission last night, and there are more exercises scheduled for today. The entire city of Boston is in lockdown. In the suburb of Watertown, police with guns drawn are searching door to door.
I mean, we had martial law up there. FBI and all these agents coming in, closing things down, going to people's houses.
First, I was deeply concerned that there might have been a organized plot. I don't know all the facts. I don't think we all know all the facts, but I was deeply concerned that this could have been, another.
While they're doing this, they're amassing this wealth in order to redirect it toward martial law endeavor, and not just in America, but globally. They want to lock down every country and force us into global governance, eventually force us into a global reserve currency that is like the Bancor that the IMF has been pushing.
And those people who have been yelling, oh, the UN's going to take over global
conspiracy
government.
theories.
They've been crazy, but now they're right.
Yeah, well, when
it's happening.
When Geithner said he would be open to the idea of a global currency last week, those conspiracy people had suggested that for years. You're not wrong.
And when massive foreign trade deals are made, they are done in U.S. dollars, which serves as the world's reserve currency. Now the UN is backing a plan to change all of that and create a new global currency.
There is a global meltdown coming. It is a global depression, and one world currency and one world financial system is the end game. China said last week they want one global currency. France said yesterday or the day before that they want one world order, a new world order, at the end of this event.
U.S. State Department, the Federal Reserve, even the EPA are sending billions of dollars overseas, and many economic and political decisions made in the United States just don't benefit us. They benefit a would-be one world government. Because of the programs like this and just the fiscal conditions that we're in, it feels like there's a greater sense of urgency to get to that one world government. Do you feel like the Obama administration may actually be hitting the gas rather than the brake pedal when it comes to this?
To answer your question, absolutely, I think Obama's got his foot on the gas pedal and is going full speed ahead with taking us towards a global government.
Oil looks higher, gold looks higher, currencies look weaker, all for the reasons that we talked about before. I mean, you've got huge wage disparities. I don't know how that inevitably resolves itself. It may resolve itself in some type of a global currency crisis. And then if the global currency crisis unfolds, then inevitably you get, I guess, an alignment under a global world government, a new global currency, and a new world order.
If the feds do not stop the wild spending and do not reform Medicare and Social Security, the U.S. dollar will collapse. That means that all of our savings, all of our investments, our homes, and everything else will blow up before our eyes.
This morning on Today's Health, a computer chip that could be implanted under your skin so that doctors can quickly access your medical record. Explain to me briefly what the VeriChip is and what it is supposed to do.
VeriChip is a tiny miniaturized RFID, or radio frequency identification microchip. It's 11 millimeters by 1 millimeter. It's about the size of a grain of rice.
Well, we got one sitting there by a penny to give us a little perspective of the size. Very
Correct.
Tiny. You implant it under the skin how?
It gets injected, just like getting a shot of penicillin or any medicine that you would get in a doctor's office. It goes in the upper right arm.
Implantable human chips. Supporters hail the technology as a medical marvel.
You have one in your arm right now.
That's correct.
Where is it?
It's in the upper right arm. It's a simple injection process.
Finally from us this evening, technology on the cutting edge. We were interested today to hear that more than 100 law enforcement officials in Mexico are having microchips implanted in their arms. The chips allow a person to be scanned.
The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one world government run by the banking industry, run by the bankers. The whole agenda is to create a one world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. If you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip, and you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
And that chip's connected to a database that has your purchasing records, what you do, what
Everything,
you sell.
everything is in there, you know? And so they want a one world government controlled by them, everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips, and they control people, and you become a slave, you become a serf to these people. That's their goal.
Look, the CIA has done in this country, what they've done to us is unbelievable. Look at the terrorist acts that have occurred. The CIA behind most of